Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm here today. I'm going to talk to you about people. I've always been a people person. I love people. I love meeting new people. I love hanging out with my friends, having dinner parties, all those kinds of people things that we do. And so I was really excited to come before you today to talk about my favorite subject. So the first person I'm going to talk to you about is, I think, one of the most powerful people in the world. This is Shell, the second wealthiest corporation, actually the second wealthiest person in the world. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Katie, that's a building. It's not a person. And you're right, it is a building. But housed inside that building is Shell Corporation. And as we've all heard, and you guys are laughing about it over the past few years, corporations are somehow people too. Now, this has all gotten a lot of attention because of the Citizens United decision by the United States Supreme Court, these 9 people who ruled a couple years ago that corporations have protected First Amendment rights to free speech. And, you know, regardless of what you think about that, it's had an enormous amount of impact. The creation of super PACs, an incredible, unprecedented amount of money in politics, leading to a deluge of political attack ads that not only, I would say, really make political debate toxic, but some of them are just downright mean. And so there's been all kinds of discussion from every area of the political spectrum talking about Citizens United, about corporate personhood, and I'm sure you've heard about it. You've probably heard of Mitt Romney's famous gaffe on the campaign trail last year, or maybe you've heard or even supported Stephen Colbert's super PAC, Making a Better Tomorrow. Tomorrow? I love that. So the impacts are huge, but whatever you think about, you know, corporate personhood and Citizens United, it's important to understand actually that Citizens United didn't invent corporate personhood. It's actually been around for a really long time. It's older than the state of Missouri. It's older than the state of Alabama. It's actually older than nearly half our states. It's been around for a long time, and it's a fundamental part of our legal system. Okay, so why is this? How is it that that building is a person, right? Well, there's a difference in the law. So let's just take a step back, and don't worry, I'm not going to give you a law school class because I don't want to see you like streaming out to the exit signs. The Supreme Court and the courts in our country and laws actually recognize a difference, a legal difference between corporate people, legal persons, they're called, and human beings, natural persons, real human beings like you and me, okay? So this is just the backdrop. I'm not going to talk to you, I didn't come here today to talk to you about corporate personhood really, or even Citizens United. I came here today to talk to you about real human beings, okay, natural people, real human beings whose lives have been upended in the most unimaginable ways by corporate power run amok in our world. I'm talking about survivors and victims of human rights abuses, people who have lived through torture, slavery, rape, and yes, sometimes even killing. This is Jane Doe 1. In the early 1990s, she was a young mother living in Burma with her family, her children, living on her farm, raising chickens, pigs, and living her life. And it would have been great, except for the fact that her village and her home were in the area of a natural gas pipeline that was being constructed by 2 international oil companies, Unocal, a US oil company that's now Chevron, and Total, a French oil company. These oil companies actually went into contract with the Burmese military dictatorship. They actually hired the Burmese army, a notorious pariah regime, to provide security for their pipeline. And the Burmese army did what it always did when it entered into security operations. It raped and pillaged the villages and areas around the pipeline, and it conscripted thousands of people, villagers, to work as slaves on the project, on this pipeline. One of those people that was conscripted was Jane Doe 1's husband, and he was taken at gunpoint to work on a pipeline road where he worked back-breaking labor for 10 days until he managed to escape. When the Burmese army came looking for him at their house, they found Jane Doe 1 sitting in front of the cooking fire, nursing her baby. They questioned her. They asked her, "Where's your husband?" And when she didn't answer them, they beat her. They beat her so badly that she was knocked unconscious, and then they kicked her and her baby into the fire. When she awoke, she saw her baby badly burned, and then a few days later, her baby died. So when I look at this picture, even though I've heard this story, I've told this story, I've seen this picture so many times, I can't help but feel sad and feel sorrow. And I think that when you look at this picture, you can't see her face, but you can understand a mother holding her dying baby. How must that feel? This is Ken Saro-Wiwa. In the early 1990s, he was an activist, but also a very well-known poet living in Nigeria, poet, writer, TV producer, and he organized more than 300,000 people in Nigeria to protest peacefully against Shell's destruction of Ogoni land. Shell had for decades been extracting billions of dollars worth of oil from Ogoni land and leaving the Ogoni people, of whom Ken Saro-Wiwa was a member, leaving the Ogoni people with nothing but a ravaged homeland, poison, pollution, illness, and suffering. In retaliation for Ken's nonviolent protests and organizing Ogoni people against Shell, the Nigerian military abducted him from his home, arrested him, jailed him, along with 8 other people, and in October of 1995, tried and convicted Ken Saro-Wiwa and his 8 colleagues, who became known as the Ogoni 9. And on November 10th, 1995, Ken Saro-Wiwa and the Ogoni 9 were executed. They were hanged simply because they protested against Shell. Now, Jane Doe 1 and Ken Saro-Wiwa, they have a hopeful story as well. These are people who I and others have helped their family members seek justice against the corporations who came into their lives, abused their rights, and in the end, killed either them or their family members. In 1995, we brought a lawsuit on behalf of Jane Doe 1 and others who had suffered because of Unical's pipeline. We sued Unical in United States court for complicity in torture, rape, slavery, and killing, including the murder of Jane Doe 1's baby. It was a historic lawsuit, and we sued Unical under a law called the Alien Tort Statute, a law which is as old as, older than Missouri and Alabama, a law that's been around for 200 years in this country that allows victims of human rights abuses to seek justice in U.S. courts. And after working for more than a decade on the case, we had a historic victory where we forced Unical to pay compensation to people like Jane Doe 1 and to establish a humanitarian fund to start to prevent some of the human rights abuses in their pipeline area. We also represented Ken Saro-Wiwa's family members in a lawsuit against Shell for their complicity in the torture and execution of Ken and other members of the Ogoni 9. And again, after more than a decade of work, in 2008, we had a historic settlement where Shell compensated the family members of the victims and established a fund to clean up or begin the process of cleaning up Ogoni land from all those years of poison and pollution. Ken's last words before he was executed, before he was hanged, were, Lord, take my soul, but the struggle continues. And it does. The abuses against the Ogoni and the executions of the Ogoni 9 prompted not only the lawsuit that we brought, but a series of lawsuits against Shell for their complicity in torture and murder. And this is where this issue of corporate rights and human rights is coming to a head in our country right now. There's another lawsuit called Kiobel versus Shell. Dr. Bernard Kiobel was a member of the Agoni Nine that was also executed. His family have brought a case against Shell, and it's made its way all the way to the Supreme Court this year. Yes, that same Supreme Court that we saw at the beginning of this presentation that gave corporations rights to free speech under Citizens United is now being asked to decide, do corporations have responsibilities to respect human rights law, even as they have rights as people? I was actually in the court in February when Shell made the arguments that corporations, because they are corporations, have no responsibilities and can't be sued under human rights law. Okay? These same corporations that claim rights as people are saying, but we're not responsible and we can't be sued for human rights abuses like torture and killing because we're corporations. They're claiming that they're the only actors in the world, not governments, not people, but because we're corporations, we have some special immunity from human rights laws. And so, you know, I've been talking about this case to anyone who will listen for the past year. Kiobel versus Shell, Kiobel versus Shell, pay attention. And everyone pretty much hears this and they say, well, that's ridiculous. How can they give them rights but no responsibilities? How can Shell even argue that? And I think, you know, when you look at these two people next to each other and you think about who do I want to protect, who should have rights and who should have responsibilities, the absurdity is pretty clear. But some people are skeptical. They say, wait a second, Katie, aren't you guys trying to have it both ways also? I mean, aren't you kind of mad that they have rights under Citizens United, but you want them to have responsibilities for human rights abuses such as torture or execution? And I say, no, that's not what we're saying. We're not saying that. We're saying that there's a difference between natural persons and corporate persons. Okay, and now we're going to come back to what I talked about at the beginning, the law. Okay, the law actually recognizes a fundamental difference between natural persons and corporate persons. But I could explain that to you, and I'm not going to give you this law briefing. What I'd rather talk about is actually something that's just common sense. Okay, so we look at these people on the left side, these natural persons. When we go out into the world to either do good or harm, our behavior is influenced and controlled by something inside us that makes us a human. Okay, we're all persons, but what makes us human? Okay, we have a conscience, we have values, we have morals, all right? If I think about hurting someone or if I do hurt someone, I feel guilt, I feel bad, I feel remorse, I feel sad. Okay, and when I do something nice for someone and I help someone, I feel proud, I feel good, it makes me feel glad. And it would be easy and it would be convenient to say, well, corporations are run by people who feel those feelings and who have those emotions and who have values. But the point is that when a corporation goes out in the world, it doesn't go as a human being, it goes as an institution, as a logo, as a building. And when it makes decisions for the institution as an institution, it doesn't make decisions with a conscience. If it hurts someone, it doesn't feel sad or guilty and remorse. So it's actually important that we treat natural persons and corporate persons differently, and that the law recognizes that. It's for this reason that, Aaron Brockovich can take PG&E to court in California for poisoning the water with chromium. It's for this reason that after the Holocaust, prosecutors could prosecute IG Farben for using slaves from Auschwitz or for manufacturing the gas, Zyklon B. So let's just talk about this. Let's move beyond this legal, personhood discussion and talk about what connects us and what do we want in our world. Let's talk about the common bonds of humanity, the things that make us human. When you look at this picture, right, you feel something. You look at those faces. You feel sadness. You think about their lost futures, their fears, their lost dreams. Okay? And this person. And this. And this. We all feel a connection to these people. It's connections based on our common humanity. It's the things that connect all of us, our shared experience that makes us humans, human beings. Okay? We all are born and we experience the joy and hope of new life. We all have families. That's mine. I love them. They're so cute. We die, and we experience the grief and sadness of loss. It's the common bonds of our shared humanity that allow us to look at this picture and care about this girl, wonder about her dreams, her hopes, her fears, and wonder what happened to her after this picture was taken. We laugh together, and it's this kind of connections that allows us to overcome sometimes unimaginable obstacles. So when we look at these kinds of pictures and we see one kind of person on one side and one kind on the other side, the contrast is clear. And this notion of personhood and the absurdity of protecting one person, a building, over real human beings on the other is really clear. So where do we go from here? I'm not going to speculate on the future of corporate personhood under Citizens United, but I will say this. Sometime in the next year, the Supreme Court is going to decide in Kiobel v. Shell whether corporations are responsible for human rights abuses and whether the Alien Tort Statute will be continued to be able to be used for victims of human rights abuses to seek justice in U.S. courts. Or, on the other hand, that corporations, because they're corporations, are somehow immune from human rights lawsuits. Now, as someone who has been working on these cases for more than 17 years and working with these people for that long, to think about losing the Alien Tort Statute is heartbreaking for me. It's devastating, personally. But I want to leave you on a more positive note. Human rights abuses are wrong. We all know that. And over the past century, we've made enormous progress in enshrining human rights in every level of our society and law. And that is continuing. But at the same time, we've seen an unprecedented rise of corporate power in our economy, in our politics, everywhere in the world. And sometimes this rise of corporate power has clashed very violently with the forward march of human rights. Now, I said I was coming here today to talk to you about people, and this is what I want to leave you with. It all comes down to this. Regardless of what the Supreme Court does, regardless, we all need to ask ourselves, what is the world that we want to see? What is the future that we want for our country, for our world, for our children, for our families, for ourselves? Do we want a world that values corporate rights over human rights? Are we willing to fight for a world that values human rights over corporate rights? Do we want to see a world that puts the rights of actual living, breathing human beings paramount over the rights of a building? I know what kind of world I want to see, and I'm going to keep working for it, and I hope you will too. Thank you.